Hi, my name is Amber. Welcome to the Meet RX Success Story podcast. Today we have a special guest, Tim, and he's going to tell us about his success. Hi, Tim.
Hey, how's it going?
Great. Thank you so much. Well, let's get started. So tell me, before you started Carnivore, can you give us an idea of what your health was like? Maybe what some issues you were going through? Maybe talk a little bit of what kind of diet you were doing?
Yeah. So I would say that I was, for the most part, on a standard American diet. Growing up, my family necessarily didn't like buy a whole lot of junk food, but at the same time, we bought a lot of like snacks that we considered to be somewhat healthy that probably contained a lot of things that were causing issues that we just didn't look at. Some of the issues that I had growing up was, so for me in particular, carnivore was majorly impacted on my psychological health, on my mental health. I struggled with a lot of things in my early teens, like they diagnosed me with ADHD, ADD, depression. They tried to sneak in the bipolar diagnosis when I was younger. So a lot of my concerns were mental health based, but I also was really struggling with I was an athlete, at least I was trying to be, and for the most part was falling apart and falling asleep and just really did not have a good grasp on nutrition. So I would say that like as I got older, I really struggled with just athletics. I was continually lifting, continually trying to eat things that I was told were part of an athlete's diet. And let's just say over the course of 15 years of athletics, never really made it to optimizing my performance. So just the two aspects of physical health, I never really felt like an athlete, even though I was trying to perform like one and following all the right steps. And then as far as mental health goes, I knew I was a smart kid. I was very good at passing tests and learning information, but I was struggling very hard in school, very little focus. And again, my mood stability was just all over the place. So in reality, I was doing what I thought was right. I was following a lot of formulas that many people told me were correct. And I was struggling very hard as a 20-year-old. And that kind of leads us probably into the next question. But I would say that just overall, I was struggling to live. I was really struggling to thrive.
Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
Um, so, when you started Carnivore, can you kind of give us an idea of how you implemented it, like what you were eating, maybe how many times you were eating, and did you have any issues?
Okay, so originally, my drive to start the carnivore diet was as a supportive measure for my mother who has psoriatic arthritis. So initially, we just kind of deep dove into what information was available. And that's how we found Dr. Sean Baker, Dr. Paul Saladino. So we got kind of a broad spectrum of how other people were approaching the carnivore diet. Um, and we tweaked it just a little bit for us. So for me in particular, when I first started, I was already intermittent fasting, about 16 hours fasted, 8 hours fed. So for me, the carnivore diet started off in a fasting state. I started off just like Sean Baker said. He was a ribeye guy, so I really approached it the same way. I was trying to really up my protein in order to maintain some glucose production just from extra amino acids, and I was really trying to break my metabolic hold on just being a glycolysis athlete, and I was really trying to get into ketosis. So when I started, I was ribeyes, probably 2 meals a day, maybe 4 hours apart. Everything was post-workout, post-work. I just find it so much easier to perform and get throughout my day on an empty stomach. So I was much more of a eat after everything is done. And I ate in rather large quantities. I would say the first few weeks, I noticed that um, almost immediately that that I was without something. Certainly had a lot of the issues that people do talk about with bowel movements not being very consistent, and I was really going through the fatigue originally. The first few days were tough without any carbohydrates, especially for continuing to perform athletics. With that said, after about a week, I started to really dive into Paul Saladino, and he just mentioned the importance of electrolytes, in particular potassium, magnesium, and sodium. And that's when I started really working on electrolyte balance, in particular with sodium. I realized very early on the difference between Morton's salt and Redmond's salt. Morton's can't even compare. So when we look at our sources of sodium, that's super important. When we look at our sources of magnesium and potassium, those things are super important. And then as I continued on, I really realized that I was still missing something, just as far as like a daily upkeep. I certainly had sustained energy through the day, but I just wasn't feeling prime. However, much better I was feeling after these first few weeks. So I did start including organs into my diet as well. So all of this to come back. So 2 weeks into the diet, I dropped about 20 pounds, I would say. I noticed almost immediately, I would say within a few days, I was not spiking and dropping. I was maintaining a very even mood, which for me, after experiencing a very unstable mood, mostly throughout my life, that was something that I knew pretty quick that this was the reason this was changing. The organs really helped me to function on a daily basis. I was so micronutrient deficient coming into this diet that I was not prepared. Just from a point of being probably lower than what I needed to be as far as micronutrient balance. So the organs really helped me. It's not something that I continue to do daily, but it's something that I continue to do weekly. I eat about 8 ounces of liver every week. Sodium, magnesium, potassium, like I said, those are daily things for me. I work those into either the way that I work out or the way that I go to sleep. So within this whole carnivore diet thing, I started off as specifically as you can, just consuming meat and fat. And I just continued to work it. So now I'm on a diet of sirloin, tallow, salmon roe. And I do 1 meal a day because that seems to work the best for me. So I do about 2 pounds of top sirloin with about 2 teaspoons of tallow melted over top of it with a teaspoon of salmon roe. And then I sprinkle some collagen powder on top and make myself kind of just a steak mash, as it were. But I have just found that it is life-changing, to say the least. And as far as adverse side effects, if you can get over that first week, those first 2 weeks, and really start maintaining sodium, magnesium, potassium balance, and then also realize that your proteins and fats need to be rationed and ratioed appropriately, I just think that it is very hard to argue with the amount of changes that I have seen just in the past 8 months.
I love how you broke everything down. That was great. I really love that. Okay, so
Cool.
now for the really fun part, can you tell us how things have improved from what you talked about in question one? Go through all those things and kind of tell us what has changed since you've been eating carnivore.
Okay, so this is probably the most important portion of what I have to say. And I didn't include some of the other specifics in the first 2 questions, but I was taking over 6 medications for a decade that were for staying awake, going to sleep, being happy in public, not overreacting in public, just from a spectrum of pain management, mood management, life management. I was taking a medication for it. And I am currently medication free since my first week of carnivore. So Yeah, round of applause. Most certainly, it's a blessing to not have to be addicted to pills. I also hold my doctor very responsible for my pill addictions. I was addicted to multiple medications throughout my early 20s, which caused so many problems in my life. So let's just take it from a perspective of a doctor prescribing me certain foods and medications. And then when I go and tell them that I am a red meat, saturated fat, and sodium consumer, and all my health markers have improved drastically, for them to tell me that I'm unhealthy is a slap in the face, right? So let's say what has improved. So I am currently at about 8% to 14% body fat, depending on where I am in my training cycle. And I maintain that year round. I am an absolute beast in the gym. My training game has changed completely. I don't get sore anymore. I go from 4:30 in the morning when I wake up until about 9:30 when I go to bed. Energy is sustained all throughout the day. I don't consume caffeine. I don't consume any kind of stimulants. I really do kind of play the game of, if I'm feeling any kind of tired or my energy is down or my mood is changing, then I know that I am missing micronutrients or an electrolyte or water, right? So I really go for those things. So again, physically, I'm in the best shape of my life. My arterial calcification score is 0. My BP as of this morning was 112/68. So as far as health markers are considered, I am the healthiest I have ever been as a 29-year-old male. Like I said, I am medication free for the past 8 months. I have not taken anything since I started the carnivore diet. That's no mood stabilizers, no medication to help me with my, I had an ulcer that I was dealing with towards the beginning of my carnivore diet that I was taking tons of proton pump inhibitors for. No longer take any of those. I don't get heartburn. I don't get nothing. So I will just leave it at that. The carnivore diet has completely changed my life. I was a functioning drug addict as of 8 months ago. And to realize that in truth, so many of the things that doctors were recommending for me, like getting magnesium from broccoli sprouts, that were giving me the absolute most ridiculous bloating and gas, disgusting diarrhea, like the recommendations that they had, just supplement it. No, take another medication for it. All things considered, I realized that I am sensitive to oxalates, silicates, phosphates. I know now that it was not really a question of I'm not doing the right things. I was just taking the wrong advice. So carnivore diet, here we are, almost a year later. All I can say is there was the time that existed before I got on the carnivore diet, and there is the life that existed after I started the carnivore diet.
Tim, I could not love that more. Seriously, that is amazing. Thank you so very much for sharing your story.
Cool.
I just can't even tell you. You
I'm a
made my
rambler.
day.
I'm a rambler, so I hope
awesome.
it can be organized a little bit.
No, you're awesome. It's perfect. You did
Okay,
great.
cool.
And I'm thrilled to be able to hear your story live. It's very awesome. And
cool.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, it was my pleasure.
A wonderful day. Yay.
Thank you so much for doing this. Yep.
You're very welcome. And thank you for coming on our show. Bye.
Absolutely. Have a good one.